Over the last decade, countless criminal cases and baffling mysteries have been solved thanks to new technology, detectives, and even online detectives. While each case is unique and intriguing in its own way, these are the 5 most disturbing cases solved from 2009 to 2019. Number 5. In 2018, a then 22-year-old college student named Christina Skates managed to stumble across a long-forgotten cold case related to a Jane Doe that had been laid to rest in an unmarked grave. Unbeknownst to her at the time, Christina would go on to solve the notorious case using her own detective skills and the power of the internet. Christina was sifting through records at Highland Park Cemetery while conducting research on her own ancestry and family tree when she found an entry to a grave from 1975 that was simply labeled as white female bones. She was inspired to dig deeper into the identity of the unknown person. She went to her local library and sorted through countless newspaper articles from 1970 to 1980. Finally, she located a newspaper clipping that discussed a victim similar to the identity of the grave. Christina then contacted many different detectives, officers, and even lawyers to find out more information on the case. A nearby detective that once worked on the case agreed to release a digital copy of the case record to Christina, under the agreement that her research was for a good cause. Under a username, Christina uploaded the files to the Reddit Bureau of Investigation that later got the team at sleuths.com involved. When the case began gaining attention, forensic artist Carl Koppelman created a sketch of what the victim would have looked like when alive. It was discovered that a mistake in the case had prevented the records from being submitted to new updated DNA databases. Upon entering the files to the aforementioned database, in combination with surprisingly accurate sketches, a match was found. It was revealed that Linda Pagano was the victim in the unnamed grave. After 43 years of waiting, wandering, and mourning, Linda's family was notified of the break in the case. They were grateful to everyone involved, and the breakthrough urged for the case to be reopened using the newly found information. While an exact solution wasn't assigned to the case, there's no doubt that the hard work of users and investigators on the internet and social media platforms played an impressive role in the case's rebirth. It was lucky that Christina happened to come across the record and found herself wanting to make an effort to help the life of real victims across the world. Additionally, had Christina never opened the information on Reddit, it likely would have just gone cold all over again. Number 4. The cold case of 18-year-old Jeannie Moore was first opened on October 25, 1981, when she mysteriously vanished while walking along the side of the road. Her case would cause much confusion and heartbreak for her family, as well as worry and fear for the community. Sadly, this torture would be drawn out for about 38 more years before Jeannie's disappearance would be solved and justice would be served in 2019. Early on in the morning, on the day that she vanished, Jeannie left her home and walked to a nearby busy street. She traveled to Harlan Street, where she began hitchhiking for a ride to work near the on-ramp westbound Interstate 70. According to the county case files, she was trying to catch a ride to work at the Tenesco gas station on 13th Avenue. And according to her friends and family, this is a common routine for Jeannie. When she arrived at the on-ramp, she was approached by a red vehicle, described as a 1969 or 1970 Ford LTD or Galaxy with a black vinyl top. Witnesses at the nearby gas station saw Jeannie try to open the passenger door of the car. After a struggle, the driver leaned over and opened the door from the inside. This is the last time that Jeannie would be seen alive. Jeannie failed to return home at her usual time that night, and her family started to worry. It was unlike Jeannie to not call the house in the event that she was going to be late. They called her friends and employer and found that no one had seen her after she caught the ride. The following day, her family reported her missing, and a huge search was conducted. Sadly, on August 30th, 1981, 5 days after she went missing, Jeannie's body was found. A group of picnickers stumbled across the horrific scene at Genesee Park. Her remains were immediately collected, and an autopsy showed that she passed away due to serious blows to the head. After the discovery, an investigation was opened to find Jeannie's attacker. Sadly, months passed with no new information or possible suspects. Eventually, those months turned to years, and law enforcement had to stop their work, ultimately causing the case to go cold. However, a major breakthrough appeared in the case years later. In 2019, Jeannie's case was evaluated. Officers submitted decades of old evidence to the new research system and database. It was later discovered that the main suspect was no stranger to Jeannie. In fact, it was her own father. Elias Alberti was allegedly found as the main suspect and the source of the crime scene DNA. Her father attacked and assaulted her before being the main cause of her death. A lead investigator responded to the results by saying further investigation led investigators to identify Perea as being 3.3 trillion times more likely than anyone else in the world to have committed this crime. At the time of Jeannie's passing, her father was out on a bond for a violent rape charge. He had previously served a lengthy Colorado prison sentence between 1982 and 1985. When the truth was uncovered, he was charged again. And the family felt shameful for their relative's sadistic actions, but they also felt grief and relief in finally having the answers for their loved one's passing. Number 3. Gregory May was a tattoo artist and antiques collector that made headlines when he vanished under extremely mysterious circumstances back in 2001. Despite the clear proof that foul play was at work, it took police a significant amount of time to treat the man's disappearance as a criminal investigation. The case only seemed to be carried on longer and longer before it eventually went cold and remained dormant for even longer than that. Finally, thanks to an unsettling discovery and the work of internet detectives, Greg's case was solved in 2012. Greg's girlfriend, Jan Booman, stopped by his home on January 11, 2001. She saw Greg inside, but he would not respond to her. She also saw Julie Johnson, who was dating Greg's roommate, Duke. Jan left and received a phone call from Julie, who claimed Greg had left to Chicago, and after that told her that he had no interest in dating Jan. About 3 days later, Jan visited Greg's home again and found that his car, furniture, Civil War memorabilia, and cash supply was all gone. Near the end of January of 2011, Greg's son Don began to worry. He hadn't heard from his father in nearly a month. The two were very close, and it was unlike Greg to ignore his kids. His children and ex-wife found it hard to believe that Greg would just vanish without letting them know, or remain in contact throughout his trip. His phone was disconnected, and in February, his family traveled to Bellevue and filed a missing persons report. As the investigation went on, Greg's car was eventually found in Wisconsin. Many of his antiques that were stolen also started to turn up in pawn shops and antique shops. This turned the attention of investigators to Julie and Duke, who conveniently left town after Greg's disappearance and were allegedly proven to be involved in the reselling of his belongings. They were charged for stealing Greg's belongings and interfering with an investigation. It was difficult to keep the trial going without a body, though. Very little evidence suggested that either of them were involved in a murder. That is, until an detective named Ellen Leach discovered something both terrifying and amazing as it would progress the case forward. Ellen is known for solving cases by investigating and locating evidence that may have otherwise been overlooked. Ellen was investigating an unrelated missing persons case when she stumbled across the valuable discovery. A truck driver in Missouri found a white bucket full of cement. He cracked the cement and found a decayed human skull inside. Ellen, who'd gotten in contact with the truck driver, sent a facial reconstruction expert to analyze the skull. He created a face and sent the photo to Ellen, who searched the internet tirelessly for hours on end to find a missing persons case that resembled this John Doe. After her hard work, she found a missing man by the name of Gregory May that shockingly resembled the bust. She shared all of this information with the Bellevue police, and the evidence was later used to convict Duke. Number 2. This case involves an online mystery and is more lighthearted than some others discussed on this list. It's considered one of the most popular online mysteries, though, and it demonstrates the power of the internet to solve even the most baffling of cases. Additionally, the hidden truth behind this story turned out to be quite scary, and serves as a warning for everyone to practice better safety precautions when it comes to home gas lines. What's known as the Reddit Post-it note mystery first began in May of 2015, when a Reddit user posted this brief explanation of a mystery he was enduring at the time. In the post, he explains the details of a strange series of Post-it notes he'd been finding around his house, reminding him to do things. The first note that he found was on April 15th of that year, and was a yellow Post-it note with a handwritten reminder to run a few errands he needed to do that day. He insisted that he had not told anyone about the necessary errands. Furthermore, there was no way that someone could have broken in and left just a friendly reminder. He was baffled, but he dismissed the issue, assuming that there was a logical explanation. Things only got weirder from there, though. On the 19th, he found another note. This one was stuck on the back of his desk chair and reminded him to save some documents on his computer. Apparently, the handwriting matched the first note, but it was from an unfamiliar script. After this, he had the brilliant idea to set up his webcam to start recording if any motion was detected. Still, he saw no signs of a break-in or a robbery, so he carried on. On the 28th, he woke up to find another note saying, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you, but it's important that we do." He quickly checked his computer to review the webcam footage, but found that the designated files had been emptied. Additionally, his recycle bin was cleared as well. He grew suspicious that whoever was sneaking in to leave him notes also deleted the video files upon discovering them. On the 1st of May, Bradbury found a blank Postit note on the outside of his door. Every other apartment in that block also had blank Postit notes on their doors, each one with a different colored Postit. This was when Bradbury finally decided to head to Reddit for some advice. He confessed that the notes were written using one of his own special pens and that the Postits belonged to him, even though the handwriting was very different from his own. Still, he assumed that the other issues would make it difficult to get police involved, as they would probably assume that he was responsible and simply faking it. Online users began asking questions about the notes and Bradbury's personal life. In some conversations, he mentioned that he'd been suffering from severe headaches and stomach problems in the midst of the note mystery. One user communicated with Bradbury about the whole ordeal and found that some of the symptoms he was experiencing could be that of carbon monoxide poisoning in his apartment. Bradbury installed a CO detector and found that his apartment was reading a level of 100 ppm, which is considered mid to high level. Bradbury was clearly suffering from CO poisoning, which not only contributed to his physical ailments, but also his memory loss. As it would turn out, he was writing the notes himself, but thanks to being poisoned, had no memory of it. His handwriting may have also been altered if he was writing the notes while enduring an especially sick episode. As for the notes on his neighbors' doors, that's yet another strange behavior resulting from CO poisoning. In this case, the internet didn't just solve a case, but they also saved a life. Number 1. In 1993, a young mother from Florida named Bonnie Heim mysteriously vanished. As a search and the inevitable investigation that followed dug into Bonnie's personal life, many disturbing details came to light. Regardless, it was not officially solved and justice was not properly served until Bonnie's son found something terrifying in his backyard of his childhood home 21 years later in 2014. After she went missing, an investigation revealed that Bonnie and her husband had been experiencing marital problems for several months. They fought often, and Michael Heim, her husband, allegedly became violent on more than one occasion. Bonnie began plotting to leave her marriage and take her child. After Mike found her secret bank account, Bonnie started giving out money to her friends for her departure. She planned to leave at the beginning of January, but sadly never got to make her escape. On January 7, 1993, Bonnie failed to show up at work. Mike later told police that he and his wife got into an argument the night before, and Bonnie left the house around 11 p.m. According to Mike and his mother, who'd come to the house to watch the child, Mike drove around town for 45 minutes in search of Bonnie. He then returned home and went to bed, failing to call the police the following morning. Instead, he called in sick to work, and officers suspected that Mike had something to do with his wife's disappearance, a theory that was only encouraged by the statements from the couple's young son. Aaron told police that he'd witnessed his father harm his mother on several occasions. Mike was interrogated as a suspect, but officers were unable to hold him without evidence. The case went cold as Bonnie's disappearance remained a mystery. Their child, Aaron, was later adopted by another family. Aaron later filed a wrongful death lawsuit against his father, even though his mother's remains had still not been found. In 2005, Aaron was successful in winning the suit and was granted a $26.3 million settlement against Mike. This settlement also included the family home, which Aaron had not been in since he was 4. In 2014, Aaron and a friend of his began renovations on the home. Due to an issue with plumbing and pipes buried in the backyard, Aaron began digging. Soon, he stumbled across something he never expected. A human skull was buried just a few feet underground. He was shocked, but at the same time, he immediately knew the remains belonged to his mother. Investigators and forensic teams showed up and began testing the remains. Within a few weeks, it was confirmed that Aaron had found his mother in the backyard. Evidence found with the body was enough to charge and convict Mike. The case was finally solved after the biggest piece of evidence was staring everyone in the face for 21 years. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this narration, maybe consider checking out my personal channel at youtube.com/ty_knots. And if you like this video, be sure to click that like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads.